to that. Again, videotape yourself, right? It makes me crazy when I'm at shows and I watch my students sometimes and their dog is not looking up. And they even hand the article off without the dog looking up, right? That's your last ditch chance to keep that dog attentive to you. For God's sakes, don't hand the judge your article when your dog's not looking at you, right? That's like saying ready when your dog's not looking at you. Why would you start that way, right? So don't do that. So ritualize those behaviors, reward them, create cues for your dog, right? Show the dog the article, spin them a cookie. So in the ring, when you show them the article, they're like, oh, cool. We're doing articles, right? Sometimes she spits me a cookie when she does that, right? So pay attention to that stuff. It's so important. It sets you up for success or failure, right? So if your dog is poopy going out to the article pile and slow, it might be that the dog doesn't have a good mark of the article pile. Because if they don't know where they're going, they're not going to go there quickly. And if they don't know what they're doing, even worse. And if you have a turn and send, that goes double for you. Because at least with a pivot, you're facing the article pile when you send them, if you have a good pivot, okay? So if you're doing a turn and send, it's especially important that the dog really, really, really knows where they're going to go, okay? If you lose attention while you're scenting, that's another reason why dogs are slow. Because they're like, you know, I mean, again, anything that's very static is demotivating to the dog. So the longer you have to stand there and do nothing, and now that they changed the rules a couple years ago, now they have to sit there even longer. Because now they got to sit there and wait for the judge to tell you to take the article and do the whole rigmarole, right? So now it's even more static, even more downtime. So you better make that downtime, you know, work for you rather than against you by creating cues for the dog and creating expectation that something fun is going to happen.
And it works both ways. She wants to look at the pile, so much so that when I pivot, she wants to look there on her own. I don't want her to go until I tell her. So by putting it all on cue, you can look at it, then you look at me, then we turn around, then we turn around again, and then you can go get it, right? If I just said, don't look at it, don't look at it, or just allow her to look at it, that doesn't really explain the exercise. The exercise is you look at the pile, then you look at me, and you pivot with me, then you're allowed to go. Okay? And so when you don't stress the dog out by constantly correcting it, you explain it. This is the routine. This is how it goes.
Right? And when you practice it, you practice it that way all the time.
You're never allowed to look away. I never send my dog if I have a shitty pivot. I'll work the pivot until I get it correctly. You don't give me a good pivot, you don't get to go get your article. Okay? So they learn that over time too. So it can work both ways. Dogs that don't want to particularly look at the pile, and dogs that want to go to the pile before you tell them to.
Okay,
So
and
I don't
make
want to
sure,
destroy that.
right?
Destroy that drive. I just need to control it.
Okay, and make sure, as Betsy said, and we're going to talk about this a lot when we talk about gloves, when you do the pivot, after you pivot to face the article pile, the dog should be looking at you, not the article pile, right? This is a pivot, right? They don't ever, pivots are healing, and in healing they don't ever have license to look somewhere else, right? They should be looking up at you, then you send them, find it, and you break the connection with the dog, right? If you pivot and the dog's already looking at the pile, you're going to get crappy pivots, you run the risk of anticipation, right? Because now your dog is raring to go there, which is great and all, but they're not necessarily going to wait for you. If you view it, I like to think of it like this, and again, we'll talk about this when we talk about gloves, is if my dog really wants to go there, and that's typically why they drop their head, then looking up at me is how they get permission to go there, right? So if they look up at me for a few seconds, I will reward them by letting them go do the articles, right? It's not that I'm like hassling them. I say, no, look up at me. Saying, good, look up at me, give me 3 seconds of attention, I'll let you go get the article, okay? So that's how we don't inject too much conflict into it, okay? So now as far as other proofs that you can do with your dog, okay, the single most important thing for you to do is put a person out there, because that there will be right? There will be this creepy judge person standing out here somewhere, right? Possibly moving around a little bit, definitely holding a clipboard, right? Watching the dog, which puts pressure on the dog, okay? So that's one thing, whenever you have the opportunity, you put a person out here. Right from the very beginning when we're teaching it, we like to put a person out here. So the dog thinks that's just no big deal.
Those of you that
Okay.
have trouble with the dog going right straight through the pile, that could be a marking problem. Or that just could be the dog not focusing on its job. If you're working by yourself, just put a toy out there, like far away. So you can be prepared if the dog decides, and you need to be on the flexi. The dog goes shooting through the pile, you just stop it. Not allowed to go there. If you put something way out there, you can very easily entice your dog to go out there without having a person around, right? So a lot of the dogs went to the person, maybe they just went past the pile of noodles, okay? But you can actually pause that and fix that on your own. without
Okay.
anybody helping you.
So again, just like we did on the dumbbell retrieve, you would revisit the distractions that you did on your dumbbell retrieve here. But again, if the dog can't handle it on a dumbbell retrieve, for God's sakes, don't do it here, right? A dumbbell retrieve's way simpler than doing this is. So if putting a toy out there, if my dog couldn't get a dumbbell with the toy out there, certainly not going to ask them to do articles with the toy out there. Okay? We'll start with, as we did with the dumbbell, we'll start with the distraction beyond the pile. Then we might put it off to the side. Right? And again, if I pivot and my dog's looking at the toy, I'm not going to send the dog because I know where she's going to go. Right? Then eventually we'll put it alongside the dog's path. Right? So I might put it here.
Put two toys out, one on that side, one on that side.
Right?
Just like you do with your dumbbell. Exactly like you do with the dumbbell.
Okay, what we're not going to do is put a toy directly on the path to the articles because that's really not fair to the dog. And we're not going to put the toy in the article pile. Because you know what? If it's in the article pile, my dog should smell it. Right? How do they know? Oh, only smell those things. Don't smell that thing. Right? So we don't put distractions in the article pile. And frankly, you don't need to. Okay? Because you're just going to create, you know, the problem people get into with proofing the articles is they create more problems than they ever solve. Right? They open up Pandora's box of stuff that could go wrong, create stress, and then they have a problem. Okay? Don't create problems for yourself. You really don't want to do that. Right? All this distraction work is first done while the articles are on the mat. Right? I think you guys got the handout eventually that had all the things we add while the articles are on the mat. Right? And that way, you know, I know that some dogs are going to get distracted and just make a mistake. Some dogs are going to get anxious because they know the distraction's out there and oh my gosh, I'm a little nervous because there's a distraction out there and that might cause them to make a mistake. I don't want that to happen. I'm just going to prevent it. Okay? I'm just flat out going to prevent it from happening. Okay? So make sure you add your distractions first while the articles are in a position that the dog really can't screw it up. Okay? Other kinds of proofing we do, of course, we position the articles where they would be in a ring. Okay, that's really important. There's really only a few different places in a ring, in a utility ring, that they can put the articles. They can be kind of up the middle-ish towards one jump, towards the other jump. They can be across. Once in a blue moon, you get them on a slight diagonal, right? So that's bear's doing. But that's it. But they have to see that picture, right? Especially if you have a turn and send, right? You need to do it so that there's a jump here, your articles are there, and you're doing your send this way, because some dogs like to peel off and take the jump. Okay, so you want to make sure you prepare them for all those things that they can and will see in the ring. Okay? The other kinds of proofs we do involve the articles themselves. We'll do small piles, large piles, patterns, lines, shapes, piles that have a clump of articles tight together and a few outliers around. Okay, all the things that might happen in a ring. You never know how those stewards are going to put the articles out. Okay, article pile close to you, article pile far away. Okay, all those little variations that the dog might see.